Our history with nature is a fascinating one. It's easy to think that humanity's spot in the ecosystem is relatively stable, but it, like everything else, changes rapidly. This is why it is valuable to consider the present in context of the past. The relationship between mankind and monsters is currently at its most favorable. While the world still holds many mysteries, many wonders, and many dangers, the Hunters Guild has become so organized and powerful that it can handle most situations that crop up. The wilderness is far from tamed, but the guild has developed strategies and weapons capable of holding it at bay. Hunting tools, dragonators, mobile cannons, our arsenal is vast. Simultaneously, science has progressed to a degree at which we can predict the movements, behaviors, and even population growths of a wide variety of extant monsters. Our knowledge has made us strong, which is why it can be so difficult to imagine a world before all this. A world in which there was no weapon capable of destroying a wyvern shell, where the migrations of monsters were as mysterious as the ocean's storms, and where an encounter with any wild creature could and often did mean death. It was a dark time when humanity huddled together in their settlements, and when the frontier was entirely ruled by monsters. It is a time easily forgotten. And yet, there is one creature whose very existence stands as an eternal reminder not just of that time, but of how easily we might be catapulted back into it. The list of terrors that haunted us in the past is long and dubiously accurate. Tales of black dragons, of plague wyverns, of eternal serpents fill the pages of historical folklore. But we do not have to look to legends to find terrible and great monsters of the past. In those fog-woven days, even a Rathian was a serious problem, and ordinary people had basically no way of defending themselves against it. If a monster wandered into a village, all anyone could do was hide. It was this pressure that eventually led to warriors taking up swords and becoming hunters, after being inspired by a certain incident. But before all that, monsters reigned supreme. And there was one kind of monster that was considered truly unstoppable. A creature whose appearance heralded inalterable doom. And all without even a shred of malice. Tales tell that sometimes, seemingly at random, villages all over would be shook by rumbling footsteps. The lucky ones would hear them as a distant droning. The unlucky ones would hear them getting louder, closer. Before long, one unfortunate settlement or another would see it. The old mountain dragon, an enormous monster who is said to simply walk over villages, trampling its citizens to death. An uncaring, unstoppable mass of indifferent destruction. These days, the existence of this ancient titan is not only confirmed, but also classified within the guild's ecological records. It is called Lao-Shan, and was, due to no obvious evolutionary connections known at the time, put into its own, at the time new classification, Elder Dragon. While one more direct relative of it would be discovered much later, back in those days, the Lao-Shan stood out enough to justify the creation of an entirely new classification, one that has since gone on to house many of nature's most mysterious creations. And among them, the Lao-Shan stands tall, literally. An enormous dragon that can reach lengths of up to 70 meters, this creature is one of the largest ever discovered. While it usually wanders around on all fours, it can assume a bipedal stance for a limited time, truly showing off its enormity. This massive body is covered in a large, immensely thick, spiked shell, usually orange in color. Its head is adorned with numerous horns, the longest of which sits on the dragon's nose. With onlookers often taken aback by the creature's sheer size, it is easy to miss all the other unusual features of the Lao. For one, it entirely lacks wings. This puts its shape at odds with most known wyvern at the time, and even today, it is one of the few elder dragons to not have wings or additional wing-like limbs. It also seems to have no elemental abilities whatsoever. It has never been observed producing any kind of breath attack, and examinations of its body have yielded no discovery of elemental organs. It in fact seems to have no special adaptations, save for one: its shell. At first glance, it looks like most wyvern shells, thick and spiky, offering up protection to the beast. But closer inspection of the shell reveals that it is actually made up of numerous layers and thin strata, all sitting on top of each other, similar to a geological formation. That is because the Lao's shell isn't actually present when the creature is born, and instead grows over time. The shell is the result of airborne particles, metal dust, volcanic ash, etc., sticking to the Lao-Shan-Lung's body, being molten down by the dragon's high body temperature, and then cooling off into a mixed, tempered layer of hard coating. Over time, the Lao develops countless such strata, forming a thick shell that is many times stronger than most wyvern shells. In theory, were one to cut open such a shell vertically, one might be able to tell exactly where the Lao-Shan-Lung has been in the past, as each type of fused material has a slightly different color when tempered. It is theorized that this shell is why the dragon doesn't have wings or breath attacks. It wouldn't need to evolve them if it already has an impenetrable and infinitely regenerating defensive mechanism. Growing a shell this way takes a long time. Time that the Lao-Shan-Lung has. Based on analysis of shell fragments, as well as eyewitness reports and old records, the guild estimates that the Lao-Shan-Lung's average lifespan is well over 1,000 years. Over this absurd period of time, the shell manages to grow into an impenetrable defense. What the Lao-Shan-Lung does in those 1,000 years besides growing its shell is largely unknown. That is because Laos are only ever seen during one particular part of their lives, when they migrate. For reasons that are still unknown, every Lao-Shan-Lung sighting occurs exclusively when the dragon is on the move, migrating along ancient routes again and again. Where it goes and why is still a mystery, as is its life outside of migration. A common theory suggests that Laos spend much of their time hibernating underground for decades at a time, and emerge periodically to go on their mysterious journeys. This was seemingly confirmed when, in one incident, a mining operation was decimated by a Lao-Shan-Lung emerging from one of the mine shafts. However, more research is still necessary to confirm it. Its migratory behavior is of more immediate concern anyway. A Lao-Shan-Lung on the move presents a massive threat due to its extreme tenacity. Forests, mountains, villages, no matter what stands in its way, the mountain dragon can and will trample it all to dust. Nothing can reliably stop its advance, and, if left unopposed, a Lao-Shan-Lung will carve a flattened trail of destruction across the land merely by walking. It does so through sheer power, breaking through all manner of landscape in order to advance. For more stubborn obstacles, the dragon may use its massive nose horn to bore into it, breaking it apart with ease. It does not hurry, it does not exert itself. The Lao-Shan simply moves forward and buries entire civilizations in its wake. All of recorded history is full of lamentations regarding this cruel fate. In the past, seeing the silhouette of a Lao on the horizon was as if a death sentence had been cast on one's entire village. There was no hope, no resistance, only evacuation or destruction. It wasn't until quite recently that fighting a Lao-Shan was considered an impossibility. But then, one day, a brave hunter in the east not only faced such a dragon alone, but also killed it, its plummeting corpse collapsing the earth beneath it into a valley. It is impossible to imagine what seeing that must have felt like. To live out generations upon generations in fear of the inevitability of the mountain dragon, to know it as a certainty akin to death itself, and to then watch it sink to the ground lifelessly, slain by a mere mortal. It must have been nothing short of electrifying. This is one of two incidents that is largely credited with creating monster hunting as a concept, and in this case, the site of the battle was so revered that a village was founded there not long after. However, repeating this legendary feat is not easy by any means, even today. In order to even attempt any kind of combat, a Lao-Shan has to be stopped or at least slowed. To do this, various kingdoms and nations have built fortresses in the known paths of these dragons over the last few years. These fortresses are the only places where the dragon's advance can be halted. Through the use of cannons, dragonators, and impeccable teamwork, these fortifications have also enabled the slaying of a handful of Laos in recorded guild history. More often than not, however, they have merely slowed or repelled the creature. The more impactful ways in which the guild has reduced the severity of Lao-Shan emergencies is through research. By reviewing records, witness reports, and ecological data, guild scholars have been able to triangulate likely Lao-Shan routes across much of the old world. Using this knowledge, various preventive measures were enacted, such as relocating smaller settlements, building additional fortifications, and informing the public about safe and unsafe settlement areas. This is as far as current knowledge about the dragon takes us, unfortunately. Because they are only ever seen on the move, much of their ecology remains a mystery. On a few scant occasions, a Lao-Shan with a discolored shell has been sighted. Instead of the classic orange, these individuals sport a dark grey armor. Immediately classified as a subspecies and named Ashen Lao-Shan, the discoloration of these dragons seems to stem from their shell being mostly composed of volcanic dust rather than a variety of molten aerosols. Whether this is the result of a genetically distinct speciation, or if there are just regular Laos that happen to mostly travel through volcanic regions, is still unknown. And at the pace that Lao research progresses, it is unlikely that we will know more about this in the foreseeable future. Our relationship to nature is ever shifting. One moment, we may feel meek and cornered, unable to face the creatures that roam the lands. The next moment, we may stand tall, empowered by knowledge and community. It is a constant push and pull, from our research into birdwyvern to our impotence against elder dragons. But this is not misery. It is our part to play in the grand theatre of life, and one we must play with grace. Through discovery and ignorance, light and darkness, life and death, through the shades of our existence, we must never lose sight of the magnificence of the natural world and our duty to observe and preserve it. It is the only way to truly live in this world of monsters and monster hunters. Thank you all so much for watching. I can't believe I actually managed to finish this series. It looked a little dicey at places, but I'm very grateful that everyone seemed to have enjoyed it and watched it and supported it. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in an upcoming season 2 perhaps. A very special thank you to all of my patrons. Remember, you can sign up to this and you get to see videos a few days earlier. A very special thank you to Kuroneko, Zion H.V. Augensen, Robs D. Hyrule, A.J. Rivera, Alistair, Jacob Bennett, Soruka, Gengreatist, Sir Newt, Orbital, Terrador, Emperor Eevee, Rambling Robin, Lizric, Hashi, Black Ace 202, Dissy, Hobblemirror 123, Magenta, Danilo Villavicencio, Arcturian 711, Russell, Person 212, Claire Miboon, Oakwood Tree, Mr. Pyramid, Pere Fuego, Makot 02, Project Iceman, Peroskoko, Geo, Jamie Tate, Nils Schlatter, Fiction Ape, Iron Camel, and Nah, I'm going to bed. Take care everyone and have a nice end of the year. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.